An open club of which you can easily be a part of. Life is life. As long as you live, anything can happen. We'll be going to Parliament to get more from Joseph Opoku Gakpo on what has been done about this very pathetic situation that happened there. But first, watch Mr. Alex Tetteh, the man who was denied access into Parliament on Friday.
Yeah, I was told I cannot enter because I am a person with disability. I cannot stand when the speaker is coming or when the speaker is rising. So I was denied access to the Parliament House because of that.
So yeah. To the gallery. Who exactly told you that?
Yeah, the security people who were managing the gate. Yeah, because they said an incident happened yesterday. Everybody rose up and one person couldn't stand, and they later found out that the person was a person with disability, and so they were cautioned that they should not allow such a person to enter. So when I was entering, they saw that I could not also stand when it is required for me to stand. So I should not be allowed to enter.
Okay. But did you challenge it?
I did. I asked them. So if can't I be an MP? Because if I'm an MP, am I required to stand if the speaker is rising or is coming? Am I required to stand? If you cannot stand, does it mean that I will not be allowed to be an MP? So I asked them, and they said, well, that's the instruction that was given to them, and they are doing their work. So I think that the leadership of Parliament must take note of this and address it, because we all have right to access the Parliament anywhere. Where everybody is able to enter, and I see my colleagues entering, but I'm being prevented because I'm a person with disability. No, I was sad. I cannot understand why I cannot enter because of my disability. I did not cause my disability. It's no fault of mine, and why should I be denied a right or access because I'm a person with disability?
That is Alex Tetteh there. You cannot believe that this happened in the 21st century. You cannot believe that it's happening in 2018 here in this country. Well, let's go live to Parliament now. Just so you know, I have in the studio with me Ms. Ofori Deborah. He's president of the Ghana Federation of Disability Organizations. He's also the chairperson of the governing board of National Council on Persons with Disability. We'll have a conversation with him. Mr. Ofori, you're welcome, by the way.
Thank you.
All right, now let's go to Parliament now and get more on that very incident. Joseph Opoku Gakpo is with us for that. Hello, Joseph.
Hello, Gifty.
Very well. Now, like I'm saying here, you can't believe that this is actually happening after years of advocacy for persons with disability. It is unbelievable for persons who hear it the first time. First of all, what has been the reaction in Parliament to this?
So it came up on the floor earlier in the day when a statement was delivered to mark International Disability Day. And the Member of Parliament for South Tongue, Samuel Kujetua Blakwa, that's North Tongue, drew attention to the incident that reportedly happened here in the House last week, Friday, when the representative from the Center for the Employment of Persons with Disability claimed that there's been the situation of him being prevented from entering the chamber because he was told by the security persons that he will not be able to stand up when the speaker is either entering or exiting the House, and so he was prevented. For the records, Parliament has since issued a statement indicating that this is something that is specifically against everything that they stand for as a house, and that they welcome persons with disability, and that although the standing orders of the house are clear, that when people, when the speaker is getting out, people need to rise. There are also provisions that allow for the speaker himself to suspend any such requirements and allow for people to sit even if he's leaving or entering the House. And again, the statement from Parliament signed by Kate Addo, who is the public relations person, indicated that the House would be investigating this particular issue and that they will let everyone know the responses. But on the floor, the MPs were making the point that when the investigation showed that any security persons may have given any such directives which amounts to discrimination when it comes to people with disability, then there is the need for the appropriate sanctions to apply. But there was a hint by the first Deputy Speaker of Parliament, Joseph Osei-Owusu, who was actually presiding over the sitting, that the security people in the House have also given the indication that they actually didn't stop any such person from coming into the House with the reason for stopping them having to do with their disability, which is why the investigation that is ongoing by the House has become crucial. And MPs hope that that would help bring all the required details so that then the House can get to the bottom of this particular matter.
Joseph, what is clear to me from what you've just said is that we don't know for sure. We don't know who must have prevented Mr. Tetteh from entering the floor, from entering Parliament. Do we? Is that correct?
I spoke to Mr. Tetteh last week, Friday. He said that the security persons manning the entry into the public gallery were those who actually did that. I tried checking, but then all the feedback I got was that I was being referred either to the Marshal's office or to the Public Affairs office, because these are individuals who are not allowed to have a conversation with the media without routing it through the Public Affairs Department or possibly the Marshal's office. And then eventually we saw the statement that came from the House itself indicating that they have taken notice of this and are investigating. Just for the records, the official statement that came from Parliament did not officially deny the allegation. The statement from Parliament did not officially deny the allegation, nor did it say such an incident didn't happen. The statement from the House indicated that they are conscious of not discriminating against persons with disability and that an investigation has already started, which is actually the official position of Parliament. Mr. Tetteh mentioned the security people in the House as those who actually told him that, but then the hint came from the first Deputy Speaker of Parliament as well. We've not been given specific timelines as to when this investigation would continue for us to completely get to the bottom of this, but the Parliament as an institution is indicating that they would investigate it, and this is something that the Speaker is taking very seriously, and so very soon they will complete their investigations and let us know what the update would be.
And what you said, the person who raised this on the floor was the Member of Parliament for Southern Okujeto Ablakwa, who's a minority MP. Are the sentiments of the minority shared by the majority?
Exactly the case. So apart from him, other MPs on the majority side contributed to the discussion on ensuring that people with disability are not discriminated against. And they rightly drew attention to what is contained in the Disability Act, which makes specific requirements that there should be no form of discrimination. Every institution here in Ghana should be able to make the necessary steps so that people with disability don't have challenges when they are getting in. And they actually made the point that this is a law that was passed by Parliament as an institution. Right. And so they wouldn't want to be seen as an institution that's actually breaching laws that they've set out themselves and have clearly spelled out. So the majority side, the MPs there as well, contributed to the conversation and indicated that this is something that the House should abhor under every possible circumstance and ensure if it actually happened, those responsible are brought to book and avoid any such repetition of such an incident.
Two quick things before you go, Joseph. First of all, do we know if Parliament is doing anything or anything happened in Parliament as far as today, the day we're celebrating persons living with disabilities is concerned? Did they do anything extraordinary, out of the ordinary for the day? Especially if we want to look at the implementation of the Act fully. Did they do anything like that?
So what actually happened on the floor was that 3 different members of Parliament, including the North Tongue MP Samuel Okujeto Ablakwa, delivered statements making contributions to what exactly should be done to better enforce the law on disability, and virtually making the point that it's about time that institutions that help support people with disability get the necessary support in terms of budgetary requirements, in terms of institutional capacity, so that then they can help them live a better life. So mainly that, usually you would have an individual MP deliver a statement and then their contributions. But what we saw today was 3 separate MPs having specific statements on the issues having to do with disability. And this is a time when the House is putting a lot of focus on issues having to do with the 2019 budget statement that has been brought, that the House is actually debating at the moment for approval. So MPs are as much as possible discouraged when it comes to having to put out statements, just making a call or the other on one issue or the other. But the Speaker admitted this particular statement from the 3 members of Parliament, and mainly that's what the House has done to actually mark the day, calling for action to ensure that people with disability are not discriminated against. They spent well over an hour and a half just discussing that particular issue before other business continued in the House earlier today.
Well, the action has to start from Parliament. They are the one who makes the law, who make the laws, and so the action certainly, just as people will argue, will have to come from them. They are supposed to be the one putting in the action. But finally, how accessible would you say Parliament is as far as persons with disability is concerned?
So that when you get to the House, the main entrance to the House has staircase. Just trying to remember, there are about 10 of them, which you'd have to climb all the way in order to get to the main house itself, so that then you don't find smooth paths that would allow for maybe people who have issues with their legs to actually climb up, except that Parliament has a second door to the main entrance itself, which is actually supposed to be reserved for staff. And that's actually something that's on the ground, that if, let's say, a person with a disability would want to use, then it's possible to access it in that particular manner. Again, when it comes to people who are unable to hear, previously wasn't the case, but just at the beginning of this particular meeting about 2 months ago, there was the introduction of an interpreter who is able to convey every conversation that's happening in the House using sign language, so that then people who come into the chamber and sit in the public gallery and are unable to hear will be able to follow the sign language and be able to follow the discussions in the House. Just about a week ago, the Speaker would usually hold what he calls the breakfast meeting on specific issues that's bothering the nation that requires attention. And just early last week, the breakfast meeting that Professor Michael Kui, the Speaker of Parliament, chaired was actually dedicated to discussions having to do with disability. And the Speaker at that particular meeting reinforced the commitment of Parliament as an institution to ensure that people with disability get the necessary support. So the commitment has been expressed. It's difficult, for example, getting access to the House when you have to climb in for people who have challenges with their legs. There is the effort ongoing with those who are unable to hear, and hence sign language has to be the way to communicate to them in terms of the introduction of an interpreter. And the Speaker actually assured that the House would continue to do more in terms of helping that people with disability who have access to the House are able to feel comfortable and do business with the House without any challenges.
On this, Joseph, was there any other thing discussed on the floor today?
The key topical issue that's been discussed in the House has been, if you would recall, the Vice President, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, has repeatedly made the point that Ghana would soon have a system where drones will be used to convey blood to rural areas and rural communities which are difficult to access using vehicles. The agreement for that, which government has signed with the Fly Zip Ghana Limited, came to Parliament for approval. And the minority in Parliament have issues with that particular agreement. They have described the agreement that's come for approval as fraudulent. They say it's a rip-off because they claim that, for example, the plan is to acquire one drone at a cost of $1 million, when from their checks, the maximum price for a single drone to be used for a facility like this should be something in the region of $100,000 US. And then they go on to make the point that when it comes to the whole agreement, the company coming to implement the agreement will be making more than 600% profit on the deal, something that, again, they say is a rip-off, they describe it. It was debated on the floor back and forth. The majority side, including the Minister for Health, defended it. But eventually, the House deferred approval on that particular agreement to allow for further consultation so that then the concerns by the minority will be addressed. And at the moment, they are debating other loan agreements that's come to the House for approval, and the House is still sitting as I speak to you.
Joseph, thank you so much. Very fruitful conversation we've had with you. Joseph Opoku Gakpo is our Parliamentary Affairs correspondent there. He's joining us in Parliament, and we're talking about the International Day for Persons with Disability. As I indicated earlier, I have here in the studio Ms. Ayaw Ofori Deborah. He's the president of the Ghana Federation of Disability Organizations. He's also chair of the governing board of the National Council on Persons with Disabilities. We've just been joined in the studio also by Alex Tetteh. He's president for the Center for Employment of Persons with Disabilities. Gentlemen, you're welcome to the studio.
Thank you.
And first of all, let me wish you a happy International Day for Persons Living with Disability. Does it feel, does it feel good? Does it feel okay? Do you feel like days like this set aside is even necessary at all?
Thank you, Gift. I think it is very important to note that for many years, disability was not given attention at all. And globally, it was felt that something must be done about it. Okay. So in the year 1981, the UN declared that year as International Year of the Disabled. Okay. And for that matter, there was an international celebration of the year. Then a decade was also declared after the 1981 year of the of persons with disability. So a decade up to 1992 was also declared, all with the intent of focusing international attention on management of disability. Okay. But I must indicate that if you examine what has been done to improve the conditions of persons with disability, the results have not been very impressive. The results are coming in very slowly. And for that matter, even though out of these international declarations, Ghana, for example, we have had the Disability Act. It's first started with disability policy, national disability policy in the year 2000. Then 2006, we had the Disability Act 715. And 2012, Ghana ratified the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability. All these documents, legal documents, are primarily to protect the rights of persons with disability and to create an inclusive society where persons with disability will participate in national development national development on equal basis. On equal basis. Yeah.
But you say that the results have not been very
impressive and have been very slow.
Very slow. Yeah. What I was asking, Mr. Tetteh, maybe I'll bring you in before we even get into your specific issue. Okay. Does it feel good? Do you think that they set aside like this, and of course Mr. Deborah here has explained further, does it do anything? Does it add anything to the list of expectations that you have as persons living with disability?
I think it does, just that it's marginal. Okay. And we can't rule it out that the day is significant. Okay. What we are calling for is that we should move away from the normal celebration into concrete things.
Concrete things like what?
Concrete things like creating access. Okay. I mean, we talk about the Disability Act. Mr. Deborah talked about the Disability Act. The Act within the law makes provision for 10-year moratorium. After the 10 years, all buildings should be made accessible. But buildings that will be built after, just after the 2006 should be made accessible from the
was that in 2006? I recall it was there was a deadline that was supposed to be somewhere in 2015.
Yes, the law was passed in 2006. Right. And it says that all new buildings will be made accessible. But all old buildings that existed before the passage of the law would have 10 years grace period.
Okay, so that would have been the end of 2016.
2016.
Okay.
So after 2016,
every single building should
whether
provide
old
access.
or new, should have access.
Should have access to persons with disability. And I don't need to go far to prove that this has not happened. Of course, we've spoken to Joseph Opoku-Gakpo, who says that we can see this happening in Parliament. But let me come back to you, Mr. Tetteh, with what happened to you in Parliament. The Parliament has issued a statement, and in that statement they say that they are investigating. We've heard someone also raise this on the floor of Parliament. Honorable Tetteh Blakwa, we understand, raise this on Parliament. Does this suffice for you, the statement that Parliament released today, and the fact that it says it is investigating? Does it work for you?
I don't think the statement is enough. I think Parliament should go further. Okay, do their investigation, come out with action points, because definitely it means that the staff within Parliament have not been properly oriented. Okay. Or Parliament itself is not disability friendly. I mean, when we talk about friendliness, it's about the structure.
When you went through it, was it in terms of the structure? Let's start with that. Yeah. Was it disability friendly?
No, it wasn't friendly at all.
How difficult was it for you to get through?
It was so difficult. I couldn't go through the main entrance. I have to go through the back door, and going through the back door, it was difficult because the people thought that I'm not required to be there. Okay.
Was that your first time in Parliament?
That wasn't my first time.
It wasn't your first time?
That was my first time of entering the lobby.
Entering the lobby,
yeah,
okay.
But that wasn't my first time of entering Parliament House.
Because so if that was not the first time, then it means that you have been allowed to enter Parliament a couple of times. So what happened? Why was this different? Do you think it was because you came as part of the RTI coalition?
I don't think so. Because other colleagues who were non-disabled people were allowed into the lobby. Okay. To the public gallery. Okay. I, together with one person who is also a person with disability, were stopped. The two of us were stopped from entering. And we asked for the reason, and we were told that if the speaker rises, we need to also be on our feet. And because we cannot be on our feet, we are not allowed to enter.
Do you recognize, or would you be able to recognize this person? Because at the end of the day, we're told that Parliament is investigating. But if you should see the person today, because Joseph said, my colleague said, he's been trying to speak to the marshals, whoever, to get to the bottom of this, but they don't seem to be able to identify and say, okay, it was this person who was on duty at that time, it was that person who was on duty at that time. To what extent, first of all, are you confident that this investigation will come out with any punishment or punitive action for the person who did this to you? And will you be able to recognize that person? No,
I will be able to recognize the person, but I feel sad if Parliament says that they don't know whoever is manding that gate at that point in time. Parliament should know, because I mean, they know whoever they sent to man each of the security gates. So Parliament should know, that. And I don't want this to be a point where a poor security man who receives instruction from his bosses will be sacked off, or his job will be left off his hand. This is an issue that has to do with the authority of Parliament. Okay. And I think that the authority must recheck themselves, must orient themselves, and must take steps to ensure that this doesn't happen again. Because I mean, it wasn't like I came out of Parliament and had a press conference. The press that were in Parliament, they came. Some of them were begging the security men to allow me in. Wow. And
he said no.
They said no.
I mean, I find it unbelievable. It's just.
I mean, the media guys were shocked, and the security guys were openly saying it, that we were told that we should not allow you to enter. That
he was working under instructions not to allow persons with disability into the house.
Exactly. At the point they said that they sympathize with me. I told them that, do you think that I cannot be an MP? And if I'm an MP and I cannot stand, it means that I need to walk out of the room when the speaker rises?
Certainly not.
In fact, we sympathize with you, but we are working under instructions.
Wow. It will be very interesting to find out the results of this investigation. But to be very honest with you, I am totally blown off. I find this unbelievable. Mr. Deborah, I don't know. You sit on the council for the governing board of the National Council on Persons with Disability. This must infuriate you as well.
Definitely so. But I also think that the investigation is very important, because I don't think this is the first time that persons with physical disabilities are going to Parliament. And I also know that even one of our prominent women, Auntie Lillian Bruce Laye, has ever worked in Parliament before.
Okay.
So it means that perhaps it may be a new directive, I don't know, or some security men using their own discretion
or
miscommunication. That's why the investigation is very important. But I also don't think that they can say that they cannot identify the security personnel, because they have their duty post list. Okay. And for that matter, those people who were working at that particular time should be brought up and then questioned.
Okay. Okay, because it certainly doesn't send the right signals. But Parliament is investigating. We'll wait for the results of that investigation, even though some people will argue about the extent of, confidence you'll have in such investigations. But we'll always have to wait for that investigation. But let's look at the bigger picture today and wrap up this conversation with it. What are your expectations? And let me start with you again, Mr. Tetteh. What are your expectations of what ought to be done? I have a petition here that has been signed. It's coming from the Ghana Federation of Disability Organizations, and of course, it is signed. It is sent to the Minister for Roads and Highways, and it basically goes on to talk about access. I can imagine how difficult it will be for anybody, a person with disability, and Mr. Tetteh, you have physical disability with your legs, how you move. How difficult it might be for you to cross a road, for example. And if we throw in that Denta Medina issue, then that's a whole different conversation. Yeah. Let me quickly read from a paragraph here in the petition that was sent to the Minister for Roads and Highways. It says, petition for the inclusion of accessibility features in all public infrastructure. And this is the third paragraph. It says, although these provisions are well written in law, they are all yet to be fully complied with. Many buildings, roads, and public facilities are being constructed in this country without recourse to the law on accessibility. Yet no institution of government is seriously monitoring compliance and ensuring sanctions. They say persons with disabilities deem this unfair and discriminatory for the country to overlook what she is mandated to do to ensure inclusion for all persons. We will no longer accept any tokenism. Accessibility for persons with disabilities is a right. The excuses are enough, and they're demanding action now. And I'm asking, where do we go from here, Mr. Tetteh?
Yes, I think the laws are there. It defines the framework. So why can't we implement it? We are implementing things and things upon things. Now the point is that it looks like persons with disabilities issues are always relegated to the background. We build roads. Why can't we build it from the scratch and put in access? We put up traffic lights. And I mean, if in other jurisdictions you have the accessibility sign, that tells you that the persons with disabilities are part of the people who will be crossing the road, so you need to be careful. A person who are blind use the white cane. Here, no regard for anything. Look at buses that we import here. There's no accessibility. Our vehicles, if you sit in the wheelchair, it will be difficult for you to travel from one place to another. Because the trucks will not take your wheelchair because they don't have time for you, because they are competing for money. You understand? So the whole issue of accessibility needs, probably Parliament must do something, President must do something, because the law is there. So the ministers and those who have to implement the law must do their work. Otherwise, it's a clear discrimination. We are not part of the national cake.
Are you hopeful that anything will change from the status quo?
Maybe Mr. Deborah.
Because we've spoken about this for, and I remember I have done several stories. I've done several stories about persons living with disabilities. In fact, I've done stories about how some of them sometimes feel emotionally alienated. Sometimes they feel like people have all kinds of perception about them, and we're still talking about it, and it doesn't seem to be getting any better, especially with accessibility to buildings. Mr. Deborah, he says maybe you have the magic wand. You have the magic wand on this. Seeing as you are yourself, you're a person living with some sort of physical challenge, and being on the board of the governing council of the National Council on Persons with Disabilities.
Gifty, let me tell you one thing, and unless that is absorbed by everybody who has something to do with managing the Ghanaian society, one, definition of disability.
Okay.
I don't want us to define disability medically, because if you do that, then people then say, oh, disability is inability, because definition is if you are blind, you cannot see, you have loss of sight, you cannot see. If you are physically disabled, or you lack the working capacity to function, and so forth. So for me, I always say that disability must be defined in the social model, where it says that the loss or limitation of one's loss or limitation of opportunity to function effectively in society due to barriers. You understand?
Right.
So if we understand disability in that way, then it means that the impairments, your blindness, your physical disability, your deafness itself is not the limiting factor.
Okay.
It is society that disables you, because the society has not been structured in such a way that persons with ability can move, can function without difficulties.
True.
For example, if you are putting up high-rise buildings and you know that there are persons with disability who cannot mount the flight of steps. So the idea is that make either a lift as a pass, or you make it a ramp instead of steps, flight of steps. And you make it easier for somebody in the, what do you call it?
Wheelchair.
Wheelchair, or somebody using crutches. Or somebody in the calipers to walk without any form of aid.
So society has created the disability for persons living with
it is not the impairments that we have. It is society, the way we have structured it, the way we have constructed it, and our mental construct about disability, that is limiting our ability to function in society. For example, I have been to several cities in the world. And when you go, for example, if you're a blind person, you reach the traffic lights, then provisions have been made with sound beepings.
For you to sound, yeah.
So when I reach the sound is beeping, p, it means
you
that
know which signal it is giving.
It means
you.
I have to, the cars have stopped, so I can cross. Then when it sounds it means there is movement of vehicles. So I have to stop and allow them to flow before another sound. When I hear another sound, then I have to move. So as a person with visual disability, I can move, and there are pavements all over. You understand? Pavements all over. So I went to Tokyo. They have even made tactile designs on the roads. That gives you the direction.
So where do we go from here in Ghana? At this point, and I've read for you portions of the petition from the Ghana Federation of Disability Organizations, and it's actually, they actually have two. There's one that's commemoration of International Day of Persons with Disability, and there's one that they addressed to the Minister for Roads and Highways. And in this second one, I'll read for you the very final part of it. It says that The National Standards Authority is equally a great disappointment. Let me start from the previous paragraph. It says the Act also make provision in Section 60 on a 10-year moratorium, which Mr. Tetteh you were referring to, as a period to all buildings predating the Act to be modified and made accessible to persons with disabilities. This provision expired in August 2016, yet no attempt has been made to modify buildings such as the Chamber of Parliament House, government ministries, departments and agencies, among others, to make them accessible. And it goes on to say, the National Standards Authority is equally a great disappointment in promoting accessibility. It took them 10 years to develop national accessibility standards, which was launched as farewell ceremony to the expiration of the moratorium provision. Now, this failure provided a haven, they say, for individuals and corporate bodies, including government agencies, who are breaching the Act 715 of the United Nations, that's the United Nations Act. Their conclusion is that by this commemoration, we want to remind government and the general public on the failure to address the needs of persons with disability and call on everybody to support, especially government, to take the lead in ensuring accessibility in Ghana. It hurts me to think that sometimes we have the conversation, we do the talk, we talk about everything. And like I'm saying, I've engaged the disability organizations in several conversations about what we need to do to give them their rightful place in society. And we always have to come back to the same discussion. It really hurts me to say that we've not made a lot of progress. Let me take your very final words, because we obviously can't exhaust the subject, even if we have more time on this issue.
I'm telling you that many Ghanaians in authority are not ready to understand the situation. As a matter of fact, it's not a matter of a particular government, but people manning our institutions are not ready for it. And I will give you a classic example. This morning, we made presentations of this petition to 3 ministries. We first went to Roads and Highways, and the chief director was there to receive it. The minister was not there, deputy ministers was not there. At least the chief director is somebody of high ranking. He came to receive it. Then we moved from there to Minister of Gender, Children and Social Protection, that has direct responsibility for management of disability. The minister was there to receive it. Then we moved to Western Housing. We gave them prior notice of our coming. This morning we gave them a reminder. We went there and nobody was ready to come down to receive our petition.
This is Ministry of Works and Housing. Works and Housing, that is attached ministry, yes. I think.
They asked us to come up, and we told them that we are persons with disability.
You cannot go up.
Your structures are inaccessible. The person who is doing the presentation is severely disabled. And they were not ready. And then somebody just said, what do you want?
From the top.
From the top.
That is very disrespectful.
You understand? And we left in anger. Nobody, not even a messenger, was sent to come and receive our petition.
And we must put this on record. This is extremely disrespectful of the Ministry of Works and Housing. This is extremely disrespectful, and there is no excuse to it whatsoever. That persons living with disabilities gave the ministry prior notice that they were coming to present a petition. They reminded them this morning, went there several times, went there today, only to be told from the top. Someone asked them from the top, what do you want? Because the building itself was inaccessible to persons with disability. They could not go up to present their petition, and not even nobody, not a messenger, he says, was able to come down to meet them to take their petition, and they had to leave. So you left with your petition?
We left.
Now, these are Ghanaians, these are citizens these are people who put you there, whoever works at the Ministry of Works and Housing. These are people who are paying you, paying their taxes so you will get paid. And this is extremely disrespecting and unacceptable. Wrap up, Mr. Deborah.
So what I'm saying is that the laws will be there, and we may not have enforcements. people's attitudes, the attitudinal behavior towards disability, if it remains as it is, and people are not ready to change, then persons with disability will continue to be relegated to the bottom of national development. But I must also say that it is not like nothing is being done. At least we can talk of certain social interventions that have been developed for persons with disability. We can also say that today we have educational opportunities, or the universities and other institutions have opened their doors. Our people are there learning.
Okay.
But when it comes to employment,
It's
then
an issue.
that is another area of regret.
Okay.
But some employers are slowly trying to give us
to get there.
the opportunity.
Okay. Okay. Well, let me take your thoughts, Mr. Alex. Alex Tetteh, your
Yeah, let me
thoughts.
begin to say that we condemn the attitude of Minister of State
Works and
Works and
Housing.
Housing. This is a gross disrespect to persons with disability. I mean, you see a crowd of disabled people coming to bring a petition and nobody will come out. What kind of attitude is that? You see, I mean, it shows that they don't regard us and respect us. And it cut across all the, ministries. It's an attitude that we have to change, because disability is anybody's lot, anytime. Any of them could become disabled. And so it's so sad. Very soon there will be a financial clearance. And when there's financial clearance, how many people are we employing? How many disabled people are we employing? Can we say that about 10% of the people we are going to employ should be persons with disabilities? This time you go to school, you complete university, you do your master's. Out of school, you don't have a job. Do you think that your parents will continue to sponsor you when that money could have been used to sponsor an able person? Okay, so those are the challenges that we face, and we press on government to do something about it. Not long ago, government promised to give the toll booth job to persons with disabilities.
Right. How many of them have been employed so
In fact,
far?
per the percentage, they should employ 200 persons with disabilities.
Okay, 200 in this year?
This year.
Okay.
Persons with them in total.
In total.
In total?
Yes, but they did employ 70.
They've employed 70.
70.
Okay.
Even among the 70, many have stopped.
Why have they
And
stopped?
as we speak now, their salary is in arrears for 4 months.
Why have they stopped?
And I can tell you that they were given a quota. They were given a target. How do you give a target for somebody who manages a toll booth? Does he influence the number of cars that come to pass? These are what you see.
So
it is a strategy
they stopped because
to
they
get
could not
the
meet
disabled
the
off.
target. Okay,
That
they
is
stopped
it.
because they couldn't meet the target. And you think the targeting system itself was unfair?
It's unfair. It's a strategy to kick them out, because you see, most of them who could not meet the target, those who, for fear of not meeting the target, they take part of their salary to top up, so that it could sound like they have meeting the target. Wow. And at the end of the day, they have less money in their pocket to take home. And so, if they cannot manage with the rest of the money, they have to stop.
Is this a case with those who don't have any physical disabilities who are also working there, or was it just for those who have disabilities?
I don't know.
We
I'm
need to be
talking
sure.
about for disabled persons.
The stories that you
Yes,
heard
for
from
disabled
them.
persons.
Okay.
And I think that if government have a provision to employ disabled persons, they should make an enabling environment. Okay. You see, they should create an enabling environment for them. I don't know whatever rule they set there, but this rule does not apply in any.
And he said that some of them have salaries in arrears.
Yes, 4 months. You can check.
4 months salaries in
4
arrears.
months salary in arrears.
Interesting. Okay, I will take that as your final word. But I am still going to call out the Works and Housing Ministry that the treatment meted out to persons with disabilities who showed up today at your offices after giving you prior notice and after giving you a reminder this morning was very disrespectful, very unacceptable. They are Ghanaians and they are just like all of us. I've been having this conversation with Ms. Sayao Ofori Deborah, who's the president of the Ghana Federation of Disability Organizations. He's also chair of the governing board of the National Council on Persons with Disabilities. And of course, I have also here with me Alex Tetteh, who is president for the Center of Employment of Persons with Disabilities. He recently was prevented from entering Parliament because of his condition. Parliament is investigating that matter. We'll certainly keep our eyes on it. Gentlemen, let me wish you once again a very happy International Day of Persons with Disability. And hopefully in the next year, when we have to commemorate this day, we'll have a better story to tell.
We hope so.
But we also believe that the what do you call it, multimedia, should have the moral right to speak on accessibility by setting the example.
But you see, we have people who, and
now I'm talking about the structure.
I know very well, but we have people who assist. There's always somebody to assist if it's difficult.
That is not the answer.
I know, but there's always somebody. There's always somebody to assist. But certainly, we will still call out the Ministry of Works and Housing.
Thank you very much.
This is still the pulse with me.
Thank you for the
opportunity.
opportunity.
We'll be right back.